Let's talk about something that most men never fully understand. The emotional switch inside a woman that makes her chase you, even when she swore she wouldn't. The topic today, trigger this feeling in her, and she will chase you forever, isn't about tricks or manipulation. It's about understanding human psychology at its deepest level. The part of attraction that lives beneath logic. As a therapist, I've watched countless relationships rise and fall, and I can tell you this with confidence. The moment a woman feels a certain kind of emotional connection, she can't forget it. It's not about being the best-looking guy, the richest, or the most confident in the room. It's about making her feel something that no one else has the ability to create. That feeling is rare. It's the mix of emotional safety, admiration, and the subtle uncertainty that keeps her drawn to you. Now, here's the controversial part. Women don't actually chase the man who gives them everything they want. They chase the man who awakens something within them, a man who mirrors both strength and mystery. And I say this not from theory, but from years of listening to women explain why they couldn't move on from a man they thought they were over. It's never the grand gestures that stay with them. It's the emotional impact, the way a man makes her question her own feelings. What I'm going to share in this video isn't a formula. It's an understanding. When you trigger this specific emotional response in a woman, she'll keep thinking about you long after you've walked away. And once you grasp why that happens, you'll never look at attraction the same way again. 1. The emotional switch. Every woman feels but can't explain. Every man who's ever been truly desired by a woman has felt it. That subtle shift in her energy when she begins to see him differently. It's almost unexplainable. One day, you're just another man she talks to, and the next, she's emotionally invested in a way she can't put into words. This is what I call the emotional switch. It's not something you force, and it's not something you can fake. It's a genuine emotional shift that happens when a woman begins to feel both emotionally understood and slightly challenged by your presence. I've seen this happen so many times in my work. Men come into therapy sessions frustrated, saying things like, "She said she wasn't ready for a relationship, but now she's chasing someone else." What they don't realize is that it's not about timing or luck. It's about the feeling she experiences when she's around that person. A woman's attraction runs through emotion, not logic. She doesn't chase what she understands. She chases what she feels. And when a man unknowingly triggers that emotional switch, she starts investing her thoughts, time, and curiosity into him without even realizing why. The switch flips when a woman begins to associate you with emotional authenticity. You're calm, grounded, and unaffected by her emotional waves. You don't try to impress her, and you don't react every time she pulls away. Instead, you remain consistent, confident in your own frame. That balance of emotional depth and emotional stability is what makes her feel both safe and stimulated. It tells her, "This man sees me, but he doesn't need me to feel valuable." That's powerful. I once counseled a woman who told me she couldn't stop thinking about a man who barely said much. He didn't flatter her or compete for her attention, yet he carried himself with quiet certainty. She said, "It's strange. I feel like I'm chasing the connection more than him." That's the emotional switch at work. It's not about control. It's about resonance. When she feels that you're emotionally centered, she subconsciously trusts you more than the men who constantly seek validation from her. So, if you want to understand what truly makes a woman chase, stop focusing on what to say and start focusing on what you embody. The emotional switch isn't flipped by words. It's triggered by how your presence makes her feel. Calm energy, quiet confidence, and emotional independence. Once she feels that combination, she'll find herself drawn to you without even knowing why. 2. Why mystery creates stronger desire than attention. One of the hardest lessons for most men to learn is that giving a woman constant attention doesn't make her want you more. It actually makes her comfortable, sometimes even bored. Desire doesn't grow in predictability. It grows in curiosity. And that curiosity is born from mystery. When a woman can't fully read you, when she feels there's something deeper she hasn't figured out yet, her mind begins to orbit around you. She starts to wonder about your thoughts, your feelings, your boundaries. That wondering is the foundation of attraction. As a therapist, I've seen how this misunderstanding destroys relationships before they even start. Many good men overinvest early. They respond too fast, explain too much, and reveal every emotion in an attempt to prove they're genuine. But genuineness doesn't require exposure of everything. Emotional openness is healthy, yes, but mystery is what keeps the emotional spark alive. The moment she feels like she has you completely figured out, that spark begins to fade. Think of it like this. Attraction feeds on a sense of discovery. It's the same reason people chase goals, passions, and dreams. We're wired to pursue what feels just out of reach. When a man maintains a layer of unpredictability when his world doesn't revolve around her, he naturally creates that sense of pursuit. She doesn't know exactly what he's thinking, but she senses there's depth behind his silence. And that makes her want to dig deeper. I once spoke with a client who couldn't understand why women lost interest after the first few dates. He was kind, honest, and attentive, all good qualities. But he had one habit. He over-explained everything. Every thought, every feeling, every text was followed by clarification. He thought transparency built trust. In reality, it killed intrigue. I told him, "You're not giving her room to feel you. You're giving her a manual to read you." When he started practicing emotional restraint, not withdrawal, but balance, he noticed a shift. Women began initiating more, asking more questions, wanting to know more about him. That's the quiet power of mystery. Mystery doesn't mean playing games. It's not about withholding affection or pretending to be unavailable. It's about understanding that your presence should carry layers, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. When a woman senses that you have a life outside of her, passions that don't need her validation, and thoughts she doesn't have full access to, she feels that magnetic pull. She begins to associate you with something rare, a man who doesn't need to be understood to be desired. So if you want a woman to chase you, stop trying to prove who you are. Let her experience it. Be the man she can't fully decode. The man who listens deeply but doesn't reveal everything. Because once she starts wondering about you, she'll keep chasing that answer long after the conversation ends. 3. The power of emotional safety without weakness. If there's one thing that quietly separates men who are unforgettable from men who are forgettable, it's this. They know how to make a woman feel emotionally safe, without losing their strength in the process. Most men either swing to one extreme or the other. They're either emotionally unavailable, leaving her feeling insecure and unseen, or they're overly accommodating, confusing emotional openness with emotional dependence. But true emotional safety isn't about being soft, it's about being solid. It's about being the kind of man whose presence steadies her, not suffocates her. As a therapist, I've listened to countless women describe the same man in different words. He made me feel calm, like I could be myself. That's emotional safety, but here's what most men miss. She doesn't feel safe just because you're nice. She feels safe when she senses that you're not easily shaken, when your emotions don't get tossed around by hers, when she realizes that no matter what mood she's in, your sense of self remains intact. I once worked with a couple where the man loved his partner deeply, but every time she got emotional or distant, he panicked. He'd text excessively, ask if something was wrong, or try to fix her mood. What he didn't realize was that his anxiety made her feel more unstable. She didn't need him to solve her emotions. She needed him to stand firm in the face of them. Once he learned to stay calm, to breathe, to hold his emotional ground, something powerful happened. She started trusting him again, not because he did more, but because he reacted less. This is the heart of emotional safety. It's not silence and it's not detachment. It's presence. It's being grounded enough to handle her storms without losing your own balance. When she sees that you can stay composed when she's upset, she subconsciously associates you with security. And security is one of the strongest emotional triggers a woman can feel. It tells her, this man won't fall apart under pressure. Now, here's where many men get confused. Emotional safety doesn't mean becoming her therapist or always being her comfort zone. You can listen and empathize without absorbing her emotions. You can be warm without being weak. The key is boundaries. When a woman senses that your empathy has structure, she respects it. She starts to admire your ability to care without losing yourself. So if you want her to chase you, don't try to impress her with intensity. Impress her with stability. Be the calm in her chaos. Be the man who doesn't flinch when she tests your emotional depth. Because when she feels that rare balance of compassion and strength in you, she won't just want you, she'll trust you. And that kind of trust doesn't fade. It deepens with every interaction. 4. How distance triggers her deepest curiosity. Let me tell you about Daniel, a client I once worked with who couldn't understand why his girlfriend suddenly seemed distant. He'd been doing everything right. Constant communication, small surprises, and late-night check-ins. He thought consistency meant closeness, but the more attention he gave, the less responsive she became. When she finally told him she needed space, Daniel panicked. He called me, frustrated, saying, "I don't get it. I gave her everything, and now she's slipping away." What Daniel didn't realize was that closeness isn't always created through presence. Sometimes it's born through absence. When there's no space, there's no curiosity. And when there's no curiosity, attraction fades. A woman can't miss what never leaves her side. Emotional distance, when handled with maturity, doesn't weaken a connection. It strengthens it. It gives her room to feel the absence of your energy, to wonder about you again, to think about your silence instead of your constant presence. When Daniel finally pulled back, not in anger but with purpose, something shifted. He stopped initiating every conversation. He began focusing on himself again, his gym routine, his friends, his goals. Within 2 weeks, she reached out asking how he'd been. Not because she was lonely, but because she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Curiosity. She wanted to know what changed, why he felt different, and how he suddenly seemed more centered. That space reminded her of his value. See, distance triggers curiosity because it reintroduces uncertainty, and uncertainty is the spark that fuels attraction. When a woman doesn't have full access to your attention, her mind naturally fills in the blanks. She starts replaying memories, analyzing your words, and comparing how she felt when you were around versus when you're not. That emotional reflection can only happen when there's silence. It's not manipulation. It's natural human psychology. I've watched this pattern repeat over and over again, especially in long-term relationships. The couples who stay passionate are the ones who know how to breathe. They allow moments of space, of individuality, of quiet. A healthy relationship isn't two people constantly intertwined. It's two individuals who choose to reconnect out of desire, not dependency. When a woman sees that your world doesn't collapse without her, she respects you more. Your independence reminds her that you were whole before she came into your life, and that wholeness draws her in. It tells her you're not chasing validation, and that calm confidence triggers her deeper curiosity. She starts to wonder, what's he thinking? Does he still care? Why does his distance feel so different from detachment? So don't be afraid of giving space. Distance, when intentional, is not the end of attraction. It's the oxygen it needs to survive. When you pull back with confidence, you don't lose her. You give her the chance to feel the weight of your absence. And in that quiet space, she'll find herself chasing the connection all over again. 5. Why she values the man. She can't fully predict. I once had a session with a man named Eric who couldn't understand why his relationship felt one-sided. He told me, "I do everything right. I text her good morning, compliment her, check in during the day, and tell her how much she means to me." On paper, he sounded like the perfect boyfriend, but emotionally, he was predictable. She knew exactly what he would say, how he would react, and that he'd always be available no matter what. And over time, that predictability made her take him for granted. The mistake Eric made, and that many men make, is believing that constant reassurance equals love. In reality, it removes the emotional rhythm that keeps a woman intrigued. When she knows every word that's about to come out of your mouth, she stops listening. When she knows you'll always agree with her, she stops respecting your opinion. When she knows you'll always be there, she stops valuing your presence. Predictability doesn't create safety, it creates comfort. And comfort, when left unchecked, can slowly kill attraction. Now, that doesn't mean you should play mind games or be inconsistent just to keep her guessing. The goal isn't to confuse her, it's to stay authentic while still being emotionally dynamic. That means expressing your thoughts without overexposing them. If she asks how you feel, tell her honestly, Nightfly, but don't use words to constantly seek reassurance in return. If she disagrees with you, don't immediately fold just to keep the peace. Stand by your perspective respectfully. The man she values is the one who speaks truthfully, not the one who speaks only to please. Here's what most men get wrong. They think being unpredictable means acting distant or cold. But unpredictability isn't about how much attention you give. It's about how much depth you reveal at once. A woman finds a man intriguing when she feels like there's always something new to learn about him. Maybe one day you're reflective and grounded, another day playful and teasing. You show range. You don't stick to a script. You express emotion when it matters, but you also leave moments of silence that make her think. The right way to talk to her isn't with overexposure, but with purpose. Instead of saying, "I can't stop thinking about you," say, "You've been on my mind today. I like the effect you have on me." It's still honest, but it leaves room for imagination. Instead of explaining why you like her endlessly, show it in your tone, your energy, and your actions. The words that leave the biggest impression are the ones that leave room for her to feel something. So if you want her to value you, stop trying to be the man she fully understands. Be the man she continues to discover. Speak with depth, act with intention, and keep a sense of emotional mystery alive. Because the truth is, a woman doesn't chase what she fully knows. She chases what she's still trying to figure out. 6. The subtle way to leave an emotional imprint. Every man wants to be remembered, but very few understand how that actually happens. It's not about grand gestures or the words you say when things are going well. It's about the quiet, subtle moments that leave a woman emotionally stirred long after you're gone. The kind of moments that make her replay your presence in her mind when she's alone. Leaving an emotional imprint isn't about being unforgettable through intensity. It's about being impactful through authenticity. I remember one of my clients. He told me about a woman he dated briefly who still reached out months later. They never had a dramatic story, no big fights, no fireworks, but she couldn't stop thinking about him. When I asked what he thought made her remember him, he said something simple. "I never tried to make her like me. I just made sure every interaction meant something." That line stuck with me. It perfectly describes the essence of emotional imprinting. Meaningful presence over emotional performance. Here's the truth. Women remember how you make them feel about themselves when they're with you. Not how much you talk, not how romantic you are, but how your energy shifts the way they see themselves. When you make a woman feel seen without judgment, understood without pressure, and appreciated without needing anything in return, you occupy emotional space in her mind. That's what creates the imprint. It's not manipulation, it's emotional resonance. The subtle way to do this lies in awareness. Listen more than you speak. When she talks, don't just wait for your turn. Actually absorb her words. Instead of generic compliments like, "You're beautiful," say, "You have a calm way of speaking that draws people in." That tells her you see her in a way others don't. When you give your attention with depth, it carries emotional weight. But there's another layer to this. Balance. You can't leave a lasting impression if you never walk away from the moment. Many men stay too available, trying to reinforce their presence out of fear of being forgotten. Ironically, that constant availability dulls their impact. When you show up with sincerity and then pull back naturally, it's letting the silence breathe. That's when she feels it most. She'll think about the energy shift when you're not around, wondering why it felt different with you. Leaving an emotional imprint isn't about control. It's about connection with boundaries. It's when you give her genuine emotion without attachment to the outcome. When you speak truthfully but not excessively. When you share a part of yourself and then let her process it. Those are the moments that echo. So if you want to stay on her mind, don't chase the idea of being unforgettable. Be real. Be aware. Be grounded. The more emotionally stable and present you are, the more space you leave for her to feel you after you're gone. That's how you become the man she measures others against. Not because you demanded her attention, but because you earned her memory. 7. Becoming the man she can't emotionally replace. Every man wants to be unforgettable, but very few understand what makes a woman truly unable to replace him. It's not about looks, money, or status. Those things attract attention, not attachment. What makes a woman unable to replace you is the emotional fingerprint you leave behind. It's the way your energy, mindset, and presence made her feel something that no one else could replicate. And that doesn't happen through performance. It happens through authenticity and emotional grounding. I once worked with a man named Jason who couldn't understand why his ex kept returning even after dating other men. He wasn't the richest, the funniest, or the most charming guy she'd ever met, but she always found her way back. When we unpacked his story, one thing stood out. Jason never competed for her attention. He never begged, never chased, never tried to prove his worth. But every time they talked, he listened deeply, spoke with conviction, and stayed grounded in who he was. She felt emotionally anchored around him, something the other men didn't give her. That's what she couldn't replace. Here's the truth. Women don't miss men who gave them constant validation. They miss the men who made them feel safe in their own vulnerability. They miss the man who didn't crumble under pressure, who wasn't desperate for affection, who made her feel like she could be emotional without losing his respect. That's emotional maturity, and it's the rarest quality a man can have. Becoming that man starts with self-respect. You can't expect her to value you if you don't carry yourself like a man of value. Don't let her emotions dictate your actions. When she pulls away, don't chase. When she tests your boundaries, stand firm but calm. Emotional consistency is what separates you from every other man who reacts out of insecurity. A woman remembers the man who remained steady when others lost control. But it's not just about strength. It's about depth. The men women can't replace are the ones who show subtle layers of emotion without losing their masculinity. When you're confident enough to express affection, to say, "I care about you," without fear of rejection, it shows that your self-worth isn't dependent on her response. That kind of confidence is magnetic. It tells her you love from a place of strength, not need. And here's what's fascinating. When you become that man, you stop worrying about whether she'll chase you. You stop trying to impress or prove anything, because you know that if she ever leaves, what she felt with you isn't something she'll find easily again. You've left an emotional standard behind, and every man after you will be compared to it. So, becoming the man she can't replace isn't about trying harder. It's about becoming emotionally complete within yourself. Once you reach that place, she'll sense it. And no matter where life takes her, a part of her will always remember the peace, strength, and depth she felt only in your presence. Attraction isn't about chasing or convincing. It's about understanding the emotional current that drives connection. When you learn to create mystery, provide safety, and stay grounded in who you are, you naturally trigger the feeling that makes a woman chase you. Not out of need, but out of genuine desire. Every man has the power to become unforgettable, but it begins with mastering himself first. Because when you stop trying to make her feel something and start embodying the kind of energy that inspires emotion, she won't just want you. She'll keep choosing you over and over again.